All for being here. My name is Dan Brooks. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Operations. I want to thank everybody for being here. This is our October Growth Planning meeting, and tonight we do have our demographer, Mr. Templeton, here. We do have an agenda. So if you weren't able to grab one out there, we do have them out there. Tonight, our demographer will present on our district housing trends. He's also going to present on current and projected campus enrollments. We'll touch on some boundary suggestions, ideas, that type of thing, and then also facility usage discussions. So without further ado, I'd like to recognize, I'm sorry. Oh, yes.
Para cualquier persona que necesite traducción, la señora Richardson le puede dar algunos audífonos. Para cualquier persona que necesite traducción, la señora Richardson ahí le puede dar algunos audífonos para que usted pueda escuchar y participar en la junta. Gracias. I'm sorry, what was that? We got you gotta keep it light.
All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Bob Templeton.
Well, thank you. It is good to be here with you tonight. Bob Templeton with Zonda Education, and we do demographics and planning for school districts all across the state of Texas. And tonight I'm going to kind of go over the housing trends, and then I'm also going to touch on the enrollment projections. And then, because you've got two schools opening, you've got a brand new elementary school, brand new middle school, I'm going to introduce some starter plans. These plans are not meant to be the recommendation. This is meant to start the discussion of how we could draw boundaries and how we could then get these schools in some utilization numbers that are efficient for the elementaries and for the middle schools. And so I'll touch on the overall housing trend. This is a graph that shows total single-family construction across the San Antonio region. You can see the purple line is the annualized new home starts across San Antonio. You can see how it dramatically shot up in March of 2020, and then it accelerated until about the second quarter of 2022. The Fed started raising the interest rates. That really cast some cloudiness on the housing market as we saw that the interest rates in 2020 and in the first part of 21 were at about 3%, and now they've been in that 6 to 7% range, which has, you can see from that purple line, caused a very dramatic slowdown, and you can see it also leveled off the closings. And so we're just now kind of getting back together with the starts and closings at about 17,300. That's the number of new single-family homes that are being built across the San Antonio region. Now, we track this data for all of the school districts in the San Antonio region. This is a ranking report based on annualized new home closings, and you can see that Judson is ranked 6th in the San Antonio region. The annual closing rate is about 980 new single-family homes closed. The annual start rate is about 862. VDL stands for vacant developed lots. Those are on the ground, ready for builders to build, and we've got about 968 future lots that are in the planning stages. Between the inventory, the vacant developed lots, and the futures, we've got about 2,000 future single-family homes that are either in the pipeline or in the planning stages, and that could be built within the next 3 to 4 years. Now, we break down this data by the elementary attendance zones. The elementary zone that's building the most single-family homes is the Wortham Oaks Elementary Zone. 351 is the annual start rate for new homes in Wortham Oaks. The second most active is Copperfield with 176. We've got Eloff with about 110. As you can see, there's really 3 areas that are seeing the most single-family homes, and then you can see we've got a handful that are being built across several other elementary zones. And here's a map just to give you a perspective. The purple outline is the outline of the elementary attendance zones. The green shaded areas are the active subdivisions that are building single-family homes. And you can see the yellow shaded areas are the future subdivisions that are in the planning stages. We have 19 actively building subdivisions, 5 future subdivisions. We have groundwork underway on about 440 lots that will be delivered within the next few months. And in the second quarter, we delivered about 152 lots. Now here's a look at the projections. This is by grade level. I also have projections by campus level. And you'll notice that we've seen a lot of change over the last couple of years. You can see the spike in enrollment that happened back in 2021 and 2022. That was primarily driven by some changes to pre-K programming. We saw huge growth in that, which also added growth into those elementary campuses. And then in 23, there was a change in the pre-K program, which caused that big swing of enrollment going the other direction. This fall's enrollment was about 23,485. So this year, again, we saw negative enrollment by about 362 students. The yellow shaded cell is the largest grade per year. The green shaded cell is the second largest grade per year. So you can see our largest grades right now are up in those high school grade levels. Now I am being rather conservative next year, so we are forecasting another drop in the enrollment. And then you can see it turns back positive slightly in the 26-27 year. And I would encourage us, as we do the facility planning, to really think about the enrollment over the next 5 years. Certainly, there's a lot of headwinds in the housing market, which is causing this challenge. The interest rates did drop slightly. The Fed did do a slight reduction. There is the anticipation, many economists believe we could see an additional rates drop in 2025. Certainly the rates dropping do two things. It helps affordability for those that are buying new homes. It also will help with the existing home market. Many homeowners are staying in their homes longer because they likely took advantage of those really low rates. So they're staying put because they've got a 3% or low interest rate. So therefore, we really need the interest rates to come down. It'll stimulate the housing for the existing home sales, and it'll help younger families that are maybe struggling to get into housing. So in 5 years, the enrollment could be at about 23,917. Here's what it looks like at the elementary campuses. You'll notice that the yellow shaded cells are when the enrollment exceeds capacity. And you can see we've got a handful of elementary zones. Of course, no surprise, Wortham Oaks. It is seeing the most single family, so it does have growth potential. It could get to about 950 students in the 2030-31 year. And then there's Olympia Elementary. Olympia's got a little bit of single family that they're winding down, but they also have some future multifamily. So it's a multifamily projects in Olympia that are pushing that enrollment close to 600 students in about 5 to 6 years. And then Escondido, it has a little bit of housing growth left, plus they just have a high number of transfers that are transferring into Escondido. And then Copperfield also getting up into that 750 range due to some growth that's happening from single family construction in Copperfield. Now those two columns on the far right are the 2025 utilization percentages, and the 2029 is a 5-year look at utilization. And you can see those ones that I've highlighted in kind of light red, they are utilization greater than 90%. The ones that are highlighted with green, they have a utilization that is greater than, I believe it's 60%, 66%, greater than 66.
The green?
The green has utilization in that 66% range. So they're underutilized versus the red are at that highest utilization. Those that are not shaded are kind of in between. So it's one way to kind of look as we start this attendance zone exercise. Certainly the Selma Elementary is close in proximity to the Rolling Meadow zone. It's physically in the Rolling Meadow zone. So I will do with my starter plan. I'm going to start with just some basics of addressing the need to have a zone for Selma. Also looking at potential ways to draw off some students off of Wortham Oaks. And again, looking at some of the other opportunities to lower that areas that are over capacity and try to get the utilization in a better spot across those elementary campuses. At the secondary level, again, the yellow shaded cells are when the enrollment exceeds capacity. You can see at the middle schools, we've got Metzger Middle School. It's likely going to be exceeding capacity in 2 years. Kitty Hawk Middle School Zone, it could be exceeding its capacity in 3 years. We do have the Cibolo Creek Middle School opening. That will provide the relief for sure for Kitty Hawk because of its location. And then it does give us the opportunity to explore how can we address Metzger, especially in light of the Kirby Middle School being at about 48 to 54% utilization. We've also got Woodlake Hills in that category that's kind of underutilized as well. At your high schools, we've got 2 high schools that in 5 years could be in that underutilized range. That would be Judson High School and Veterans High School, Veterans Memorial High School in 5 years could be underutilized there. So here's a quick look at my starter plan. I do have my software, and I'll demonstrate that software after I go through these starter plans. So we have all of the schools geocoded, their students geocoded to their addresses, so we have their exact locations mapped to our mapping software. Now, I'll zoom in just a minute to give you some more details on the streets, but it's that light purple zone. That is the zone that is the new Selma Elementary zone. The green zone is the Rolling Meadows zone, and you'll notice I took the farthest sliver off of the Wortham Oaks and had that come down to Rolling Meadows. Man, I did not like that. I did not like that at all. I struggled with that just because I couldn't find a way to relieve Wortham Oaks. Now that big void in between Rolling Meadows and Wortham, that's the concrete plant stuff. So there's really nothing that's going to happen in between there. There's a little bit of vacant land around Rolling Meadows, so there's still, I'd say, 3 significant tracks down the road that will provide some growth into the Rolling Meadow and possibly the Selma zone. But I really struggled with that Wortham Oaks, how to pull off some kids off of there. Now this is where there are lots of ways to address new attendance zones. One, you draw the boundary. You also can look at programs. You can also look at the transfer patterns. And so those are things that, where's the pre-K? Could pre-K be moved? Could dual language be moved? Those are ways to softly address the overcrowding in addition to looking at the attendance zone movements. Now this area of the district, I've kind of zoomed into kind of the southern boot of Judson ISD, and the red outlines represent your current elementary zones. And you can see I kind of straightened out the zone between Masters Elementary and Candlewood. And I kind of did some smoothing up the boundaries there. I took the northern edge off of Escondido and moved it to Eloff. And I took a little finger there off of Escondido and moved it to Woodlake Hills. So those were my starter options for how to address some of that enrollment at Escondido, the underutilization of Eloff, and trying to smooth out that Masters Candlewood area for the enrollment patterns. Now here's a look at the projections for these. I'm going to see if I can make this easier to read. I'm going to Okay, a little better. Let's close this. So Selma is the new elementary zone, I'll scroll down so we can see Selma. Oh, current. This is the wrong report. Okay, under this plan, Selma would start with about 381 students. Rolling Meadows would drop down to about 426. Wortham would be at about 634. And let's see, Escondido, 850. So Escondido is still a little big, and this is one campus that's got a lot of transfers, so there may be the opportunity to address this Escondido numbers with addressing the transfers going forward. Eloff is at 560 to 580, and when I show the grade report, it will show the new utilization numbers for these campuses. So you can see now, you know, Converse, Copperfield. Converse is still at 98%. But under this model, I've gotten pretty much all of the elementaries. Let's see, Coronado Village is at 58%, still the most underutilized. But you can see the remaining elementaries are in a pretty even spot between them, around that 85% range. Park Village 73, Rolling Meadows 48% utilized. So with these changes, Rolling Meadows drops down to about 424. Salinas is at 90%, Selma 44%. Definitely still some work to do. So again, this was just meant to be a starting point to get us engaged in this attendance zone drawing exercise. Now I'm going to go to the middle school maps before we kind of open it up for some discussion. So this is the current middle school attendance zones with the 5-year forecast. Again, you can see Metzger, Kitty Hawk, Cibolo Creek is up here in the far north area of the district. So this opening of Cibolo Creek primarily is going to be removing kids from Kitty Hawk, and Kitty Hawk is, you know, large, and the Judson numbers do include the STEM Academy numbers for Judson Middle School. And Metzger is going to be at about 1,200 students in 3 to 4 years. Here's my starter plan for the middle schools. The yellow shaded zone is the proposed Cibolo Creek Middle School. I added a little bit of a corner here to Kitty Hawk from Judson, and then I took this section and added this to. This becomes the new Woodlake Hills zone.
Feeding into Judson.
Feeding into Judson High. And then I've adjusted the Metzger. This portion would be leaving Metzger and going to Kirby. So it's got several moves here between Metzger, Kirby, and Woodlake Hills and Kirby. So you can see it balances out the numbers fairly well between the middle schools. Keep in mind, Judson Middle still has that STEM program, which is what keeps it up over 1,000 kids. Cibolo Creek would be in that 500 to 600 range in the next, 4 to 5 years. Metzger stays in that 940 to approaching 1,000 students. Woodlake Hills, so definitely an improvement and a more balanced enrollments between your middle schools. Now, what would this look like if we were to use this concept for the middle schools? This is what it could look like for the high schools. The green shaded area would be the Veterans Memorial Zone, and then the cranberry color is the Judson High Zone, and the gold would be the Wagner High School Zone. You can see that definitely balances out between Judson and Wagner, so they're fairly close in enrollment. Veterans Memorial would be the smallest of the three high schools. Their enrollment would be at about around 1,500. Now here's the software that we use, and I'll just do a quick demonstration of the software. We have the ability to turn on the students, and we can literally just adjust. We can select neighborhoods, assign them to schools, and we can immediately see the impacts on the enrollment, the forecast, and the utilization. So at this time, I'll take some questions or some comments.
So why aren't you taking the bottom of Wortham Oaks and moving it to Rolling Meadows rather than taking the top of Wortham Oaks and moving it to Rolling Meadows?
My rationale was I wanted the kids that physically live closest to Wortham Oaks to go to Wortham Oaks. And the ones that I selected were the ones that were farthest away from Wortham Oaks. Were you asking about Rolling Meadows?
Rolling Meadows and Wortham Oaks.
So for your question is about Rolling Meadows? Or was it-
Rolling Meadows, so
Yeah.
why not take the subdivision closest to Rolling Meadows and pull it down? The blue that's at the top of Rolling Meadows and pull it down, rather than pulling the
Right.
kids all the way at the top of Wortham Oaks down to Rolling Meadows.
So for the Selma Elementary Zone, I use this kind of major, the railroad track. So for Selma, I use the railroad track, and I kind of use this geography that as I look at it and as we look at the numbers, they're the closest group to the location of Selma. And then I needed to try to get some off of Olympia, so then I chose this area because of the access to get underneath 35 to get in here. Now, when you look at Wortham Oaks, the reason I chose this area is because they're the farthest away from Wortham Oaks. So I kept the ones closest to Wortham Oaks attending Wortham Oaks. And again, this was just meant to be a starter, a discussion. So if you'd like to see another way to move it, I'd be happy to take those notes down and we can certainly explore it. But I can tell you, there are thousands of ways to draw boundaries. And any way we draw them, there will be folks that are not gonna like the boundaries.
The greatest complaint that the Wortham Oaks parents have had is the transportation. So I don't see them being really excited that they're gonna have to come and drive far. Because that has been the biggest complaint since Wortham Oaks has opened, about how far their kids have to travel to get the races.
So from your perspective of this area here, which
Yeah.
is the target to move from Wortham Oaks to Rolling Meadows? Which would you recommend?
I guess I would recommend the top half.
Okay.
So that area up here, and pulling those people, what are you projecting as far as growth in the area of green?
The growth areas are,
Because that's still all unbuilt. And
Yeah,
no one
these are
likes
the growth
that.
areas right here, this area.
Okay, and the green area, is that developed, undeveloped?
It is in development.
So they're gonna put houses where it's green.
They're gonna put houses in this area right here.
But that area that you're looking to move, is that developed area? Are those farm properties that just have a lot of land?
This is the JW Marriott, so this is not going to be developed. This is already, it's developed as the resort.
Okay. So where's all this is already developed,
It's developed,
and so we're not expecting any more housing there?
not much, no,
And most of the development's coming from here.
correct.
So what are you projecting as far as development here?
I mean, there's probably about another 100 potential elementary kids in that area. Again, there's more, there's other ways to solve these problems. This was my first attempt, and the reason I chose this group over these, most of these kids could physically walk to that school. So that was my rationale for not taking kids that possibly could walk to school versus these kids not likely to walk, and they're the farthest away.
I see your logic.
So if that little corner in the Olympia area, you're planning on pushing over to the Rolling Meadows School?
Selma.
Oh, Selma, to Selma.
Yes.
Then why would you not just pull those kids and put them at Coronado? Because to me, you only got about 150 or so kids. If Coronado's capacity is 500 something, and at 340 something right now, that would be a much easier transition to bring those kids from there. It's a much closer and easier transportation just to get across Pat Booker versus going through all that traffic, getting all the way over to 35, and then you solve the problem of the underutilization of Coronado. There's also the idea that you've got Copperfield and Salinas that are underutilized, but yet Coronado's not, and they're still within a good proximity of maybe redistributing to that school, and even possibly Crestview, which I believe is also underutilized according to your chart, yes?
Right. So my thought here was, I was trying to get, a larger number into the new school. So I was trying to get, and I really couldn't take any more out of Rolling Meadows, because Rolling Meadows was already getting too low. So I was trying to find that sweet spot of how can I provide some relief to Olympia while also adding some students to the new elementary school so that I could get those numbers, up a little bit there.
Bob,
And again, this plan is not meant to be the recommendation. This is meant to be, just to do what this is doing, to give us some ideas, let us hear what you think. Again, I didn't craft this plan as the perfect plan. I just, knew that I needed to get a plan for Selma, and knew that I needed to get a plan for Cibolo Creek, and while also looking at the utilization of those other buildings. But certainly we could explore other movements, in other areas.
Bob, could you highlight the sliver area that we're talking about that's currently at Olympia and tell us how many students are in there?
$45.
45.
Had a question on that side.
Oh, I have stand-ups. I actually had a couple of questions, and the first one was, in that little top green sliver that would be slated to go to Rolling Meadows, how many are there, out of curiosity? Can you count that?
Yes.
And then while you're doing that, thinking about that, do we know how many middle school and high school students are in that area?
Yes.
Okay. Fascinating software. I really do like that.
This is 135.
Now, are those students who actually attend Wortham Oaks right now, or is that a potential?
No, those are the kids that are enrolled in Judson ISD.
That are enrolled in Judson ISD, so this green And you said, how many was that again?
135.
Is that
135.
elementary only?
That's elementary.
Or go toward the Oaks, okay. What would
There
the-
could be some there that may be transferring to another elementary,
Maybe,
but not, it's likely most of them are where the most, yes.
My bigger thought here would be trying to do something to keep that pocket in the Northern Oaks area, and the reason being, it doesn't really affect my child, but you want to see growth ultimately at Veterans High School, and you don't want to alienate some of this particular demographic right off the bat in elementary school, that then they put their kids in Great Hearts, and then the kid stays in Great Hearts all the way through high school, and when we're trying to, with the new middle school, which will have a lower attendance, and the high school, we want to keep those numbers. So if there's any way to avoid that, I think that would be ideal, even if it means grow our capacity and adding portables.
So definitely there are ways to do that. That's where looking at the programs, the pre-K, the transfers
Right.
that are in there. So you take a look that's outside of the attendance zone exercise, and there may be, do you think, again, this is me thinking outside the box. You've got a brand new middle school right there. Could there be fifth graders at the middle school? Then there would be plenty of room. Now, the fifth graders with middle schools, I get that. That's hard. What a lot of charters, their grade configuration is K-8. And so that proximity to that middle school is gonna have some space. Could we think outside the box, and maybe that could be a way to
And
do
thinking
that?
forward towards that middle school, I think putting something like a STEM program there would be ideal, especially in that area. I think you could attract additional students from other areas
Mhm.
that might be northeast and might go, wow, this brand new middle school is right across the street from where my kid is now, being bused down to Tex Hill, and I would rather have them go to a STEM program. I think something like a STEM or an arts program might help in attracting and beefing up the attendance at that middle school, which then in turn, again, might lead to those kids wanting to stay with their peer groups and go on to veterans. So that's all.
Yes. Middle school wise, not as many middle school kids there right now,
No.
but
Yeah, but I'm curious.
the middle school numbers for that area,
But that 145 will eventually turn into middle school.
they will.
So that's
There's only 33 middle school kids there now.
correct. I can see that.
And, okay. Next question. Let's see, who's got the mic? Okay. Who gets that first?
How would it not having school of choice impact numbers? Like if everyone went to their home school and you took aside like some of like the fine arts academies and the leadership academies, and I can't think of the STEM, if you took those out and those were school of choice, but if other than that, we like back to neighborhood schools, how would that impact numbers?
It definitely would affect areas like Escondido. Escondido has a high number of transfers in. It really, the Wortham Oaks is really a function of the housing growth. So for Wortham Oaks, it is about the housing growth.
Sure.
And so, but no, definitely.
Just in general.
The transfers, because of the schools of choice, does have an impact. I can't tell you what it is right off the top of my head, but because it varies from campus to
Yeah,
campus.
isn't everybody just saying where they?
All right. Next, yes.
Yeah, I'm back here. Phil Sterling with Fox 29. I know we're talking about these basically attendance maps. They're all plans, but you also mentioned something about like moving classes around. I believe at Coronado Village Elementary, a pre-K class was moved to another school. Could we talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, when I was looking at the numbers for Wortham Oaks, my look at pre-K was, I recognized that, man, I didn't like that sliver of Wortham Oaks. That was a boundary move that I couldn't figure out a way. But then when I saw they had pre-K, well, if you take the pre-K off of Wortham Oaks, that might free up a couple of classrooms. Then that would be a way to address the potential for Wortham Oaks would be through a pre-K movement. Now, right now, pre-Ks, I believe, are pretty much at every elementary school. So that would be a different approach, would be to group pre-Ks and elementaries to help you with areas where you're overcrowded or at capacity.
Good evening, you guys. Again, these are recommendations from the demographer, not ones that we're ready to go with, just recommendations. I agree with the question. Most of our schools, if not all of our schools, offer pre-K through 5th in elementary. So I'm not sure that we, as a group, a growth and planning committee, would make a recommendation that we wouldn't provide that same service to Worthingtons. In addition to pulling that sliver off the top, I understand how we wouldn't want to bring students around. Are there ways that we can implement a programmatic change that would take as many students down to the new elementary school as well? So it's not like we're saying this is what we're recommending to the board. These are just recommendations of a demographer who looks at the numbers and says, hey, this is the best way I see to get this done. So this isn't, hey, this is what's gonna happen in the future, it's just recommendation.
And I would also classify it as a starter.
Correct.
It's the start of the
To
discussion.
facilitate the
start of the
discussion.
exercise, so that we take comments and then we can explore and see how we can craft a better recommendation.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Erin Kramanski. I'm a parent, and I have a pre-K kid at Wortham Oaks, and I have 2 children at Veterans right now.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to give my feedback. I realize this is a first choice, or a first look at this. So as a parent, I do agree with a lot of what this thing said over here. Those are my feelings. So my middle child actually had to attend Kitty Hawk when we first moved in the district. And that was such an incredible burden to me to go back and forth there. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. I had said at that time, there's 0 chance I would send another kid over there. And at that point, we didn't have a middle school announced yet, the new one. So if she grew up, I wasn't gonna do that. She would have gone to a private school or something. I couldn't handle that myself. So a lot of what she's saying is, you know, now I have a plan for my family. I built my house, I built my life around this, and this is what I'm planning. If you were to take her out of there, my initial thoughts was, nope, we're not doing it, because I'm not going back and forth doing this drive. I just can't personally do that. So,
She lives in the
agree.
sliver.
Yeah.
But I don't
agree.
think the recommendation was even the sliver was at Rolling Meadows, which would still feed into veterans and civil.
I know, but I'm saying for elementary, I'm not gonna be,
And
you know,
again,
going back and forth.
it
I
was
know it's
just
just
a
recommendation, so I'm just saying, this is a feedback as from a parent. She's absolutely right. I agree with everything she said. Additionally, I know that there's other options. I can come in here, and I'm glad other people have said similar things that I was thinking already as a parent. You know, why don't you group all the pre-K as central place and just send the pre-K, that was one option, or send it from a primary and a secondary school, like I've seen, like my kids in other districts before I moved here. They had like pre-K through 3rd, and then 4th through 6th or something, 4th through 5th, and do that separately. And then the cohorts of kids can actually stay together. Because if you're gonna split up an elementary school in the middle of 4th grade or 5th grade, wherever those kids are at, that's very disruptive as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or statements? Yes, ma'am.
Just how many transfer students are there exactly? Do we have that? Like, how many? You said it would greatly affect the demographics of the schools if there were not transfers respectively. So how would that?
Yes, we calculated that earlier.
Yeah, transfers are basically, there's 3 types of transfers. There's program transfers because of the schools of choice or dual language or special programs. So those cause transfers. Then there is the out-of-district transfers, and then there is staff. So elementaries that are close to secondary buildings tend to have higher staff because the middle school teachers that have elementary kids and elementary, so it's really those 3 things that make up the transfers in and out. Some campuses, it's a little bit of a wash in that there's as many transferring in as transferring out. And then there were others that I did notice that had a higher amount of transfers in. And so certainly, as I mentioned, there is a way to affect these numbers by how you deal with the transfers, either through programs or limiting the transfers.
So was your question, how many transfers are at Wortham Oaks, or how many
Well,
would
just
be on
in general,
programmatic
like,
change?
because when you look at the demographics, I mean, you're talking about the overutilized schools and the underutilized schools. Those schools that are overutilized, do they have a higher, I'm assuming, they have a higher number of transfers, or is that not a good assumption?
No, for Escondido, it's a transfer, plays a big part of Escondido's is transfer. So that's why I think it can be addressed partially with how they deal with transfers. For Wortham Oaks, it's more about the housing
Where they
growth.
are, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And part of the issue with the transfers at Escondido is that we went to that year-round at Converse, and a lot of the people, families that didn't want to participate in year-round, found themselves transferring to Escondido. Now that Converse is back open for the regular school cycle, they've established their home in Escondido. So we find that we have a lot of transfers from Converse over to the Escondido area.
Now, would you potentially kind of redistribute that, or is it they're there and that's it?
Right now, our district is a school of choice district. So if they elect to go there and we have the capacity for them, we can. But we have Dr. Gosh who looks at the staffing, I mean, not the staffing, but the enrollment in each of the campuses. And if we ever get to a point where there's just too many students there, then that's when we would come back to the board and make a recommendation that, hey, maybe we need to cap the student transfers into that campus because it's being overutilized. What about the middle school? Any recommendations on that? Yes, ma'am.
STEM.
Other than STEM?
Art.
I would say that,
Put some programs there to attract people in the area.
I would say with STEM as well as our high schools, we have programs that attract students to those campuses. We don't duplicate, we try not to duplicate those same things at all of the campuses because it's expensive. We just opened up a STEM campus over at Kirby Middle School, and we had to get a grant to get that started. I think it came out to about $1.2 million. So if we were going to start something like that at another middle school, we would look at spending that amount of money. In addition, we've got a STEM program over at Jason. So we've got 2 middle school STEM programs right now. Kirby's not really in a centrally located area, but it's where we chose to put that STEM program that students could feed into. We could look at something like that as a growth and planning committee to recommend to the board as we go forward. But I would ask us to look at the centralization of programs in which we establish. Yes, ma'am?
It's probably silly. Have we looked at like the programs that we offer in elementary, mirroring one in the middle school? So like Olympia Fine Arts Academy, we have a middle school Fine Arts Academy so that then it can,
That's
like
what
we
I-
have a leadership elementary, a leadership middle school, like, so then.
That makes perfect sense. We could look at that in terms of what we implement once the school gets underway. I don't know if we can start the school and, I mean, it took
Right.
years to establish
Sure.
at those campuses that they're at, but
But
definitely,
if there's
that makes
a
perfect
draw
sense.
for it, then we don't want to
I would agree.
finish 5th grade. yay.
Exactly, and then you've got a fine arts
Right.
academy preparing the students, and a really great fine arts program over at Veterans where we can do the same thing.
Yeah,
for the middle
fine
school.
arts.
I agree.
Technology, we have JTech, we could do some middle school technology.
And we've got, what is it, cybersecurity over at Veterans. So
Let's
we've
do
got
cooking.
a technology program over there.
Yeah, let's do culinary middle school.
Well, we've got a culinary program that's very expensive to start up in terms of ovens and all the other stuff over at Wagner that students can go to. So no questions or recommendations about the, yes ma'am?
So why, since Metzger is so large at this moment, I'm sure there are concerned parents well as far as if I want my child to be in a STEM program, why are we not encouraging them to go to Kirby's STEM program rather than transporting all the way to Jason?
Her question is, and we don't, her question is, if we have an increased utilization over at Metzger, are we encouraging students to go to Kirby and not to Jason? That's something that we've already looked at. Matter of fact, if you notice on there, Bob had actually cordon out an area that feeds into Metzger, and he was redirecting that over to Kirby. That's Candlewood. And Candlewood is the new implementation of the STEM program that now it'll feed directly into the Kirby STEM program, to your statement earlier. So that's the recommendation in the plan. And then as you can see, it increased the numbers over at Kirby and then dramatically decreased the numbers for Metzger. So excellent point. No other recommendations? Come on now.
What are the biggest challenge, it seems, is that we have several elementary schools with low attendance. Is that what I'm gathering? And some with high, is that kind of what we're trying to work out?
I would say that we have one elementary school with pretty low attendance, and we spoke about that before. We have other elementary schools that appear to have low attendance. One that we can see going forward stays right below 400, but another one that will progress up higher in terms of Olympia as it gets bigger. And then if their fine arts program continues to flourish, it's going to really blow up. They're doing an excellent job over at Olympia. So we have to look at the number of students that are actually at each campus. That's why it came up in terms of looking at these numbers, how you could relocate programs. Because the number of students that we are feeding into Coronado are how much for the dual language program? About 120 or 150? I think it was more like 150.
It's like 147.
Gotcha, 150. So if you were then to look at the numbers that they have now and take out the 150, where we could move that program to another campus, that even brings it down even lower. So in terms of the utilization of people who live in that area that feed into that campus.
But if the area schools like I mentioned earlier, like Copperfield and Salinas are overutilized, then why would you not like redistribute those over to Coronado? Wouldn't that be something, they're close enough in proximity that it wouldn't be unreasonable, the busing would be all that much different?
I mean, we had Salinas kids when y'all were building it.
Had what?
Correct.
Say that again?
We had the Salinas kids when they were building Salinas.
So we would pass Salinas students. Can you go back to the numbers, Bob?
Yes.
So as I look here for Salinas, it's currently at 674, and you see it start to decrease. So there's not an overuse of Salinas. Now, if you go up to Copperfield, as to your point, we see the numbers start to go up, but then we also see them start to decrease as well. But there is a need to look at the attendance lines for Copperfield to see if we can kind of decrease the amount of students over there. I would tell you the reason why we're seeing such high numbers is because it's not even with all of the students that live in that area. It's right across the highway over there by Greytown Road. Those students are zoned for East Central, but they can see the elementary from their house. So a lot of them choose to transfer into the Copperfield campus. And we've ran into situations in the past where we've had to, and I'm looking at Lacey and Dr. Saunders, where we've had to cap them from transfers because so many people were transferring into that campus. So it's not really about the utilization of the people who live in that area. It's about the people who want to transfer in because they don't want to take that bus ride all the way back down to, what is it, 87, where East Central is?
I think it's Pecan Valley might be the elementary school.
Pecan Valley.
Oh, thank you, Traditions. Wave Runner is the name of the street. Like the first 5 houses on Wave Runner belong to Judson and the rest of them are East Central. So we had a ton of East Central families coming over.
But they say it's a long ride,
Yes,
right?
to the new elementary school in East Central it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Students are bused into Olympia for the program there. Are there a lot of transfers into Olympia for the leaders in the leadership of Olympia?
I asked Dr. Saunders and Dr. Goss, how many students are bused into Olympia for their fine arts program? I don't think that it's up to the 150. I think most of the students taking advantage of that program live in that area. It's 125, so it is almost 125. Yes, ma'am.
How do you figure out capacity?
Well, what we do is we look at how many rooms are available in the campus, how big the campuses are, and how many students that we can put in based on their square footage, but based on also the utilization of what's going on inside the campus. Because not all, like, the example that I use most often is Kennedy. They have a classroom over there, but if you guys were watching the board meeting, not this last one, but the one before, there was a community member that we recognized who started that Eagle Bucks program over at Candlewood. Really beautiful. And they built the room up to where students can go in and shop based on the Eagle Bucks that they earn in classes. We wouldn't necessarily take that out to campus, but that's a classroom that now can be utilized for student capacity. So we sent that to Mr. Templeton, and he was able to use that to determine what the capacities were at each campus. The one that I always look at, kind of with a wink eye, is the middle school, Judson Middle. It really wasn't, oh, that you were gonna ask about that one?
No, can I see middle school?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Judson Middle School says that their capacity is about 1,700 students. That, if you guys remember back when Judson was this huge monstrosity, they built the red and gray campus. That gray campus wasn't built for middle school capacity. It was built for academics for 9th and 10th grade. And then if there were specialties, you went back down to the red campus. So it really wasn't built for a comprehensive campus, it was just built for 9th and 10th grade. So when I see that 1,700 capacity, it really wasn't built for that in a comprehensive capacity for a school. Did you ask a question then? Or you just?
No, I'm just looking at the numbers. The district change down there is negative, what? Can we look at the elementary one again?
Can we look at the element?
Sorry.
You got it, Bob.
So our capacity total is about 14,000 and projected 10 years out or even 5 years out, it's at 12. So that's a rough difference of almost 2,000 students, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Across all the campuses
Across
throughout.
all the campuses.
Right.
That we're not, so we're trying to even it out so that our 12,000 are distributed better amongst the campuses?
Well, I would tell you, the question was that the capacity is 14,000 and we're looking about 12,000 in 10 years across the district. Are we stretching that out across campuses? Not necessarily evenly.
Right.
What we're looking at is just total capacity. Just correct me if I'm wrong. Total capacity versus where we have capacity available. In addition, I would say that you really don't want to fill a school up to where it's at 100% because it's a real uncomfortable situation for everybody involved if it's just jam-packed, full of as many students that you can put in there. So we like to operate between, 80 and 90%?
That's 85%.
Got it.
Also, the reality is, there's a certain percentage of the capacity that you can't easily access. How does that happen? If you have 115 kids in a grade level, that then causes you to have to go to 6 sections. So then therefore now you've taken up extra space, and so you can't. And the elementary numbers are not evenly distributed across all the grade levels equally. So you'll have one grade level that's 115, another grade level that's 100, and so you need to have that buffer room, and it's about 5 to 7%, so that when you get to that 93%, you will have grade levels that will be full. And so that's why it really can't get to 100%. The only way districts get to 100% is if they overflow, and then they fill those seats by overflowing to other campuses to get them to that 100%. So really about, 85% is optimal, and you can get to about 93, 95%, and usually not have to go into portables.
Understood.
And do you have the forecast for what your prediction was that it might look like with the Selma Elementary opening? You have that?
Yes, ma'am. That was the one that looked like a Word document.
Right,
Right
yes,
there. Yes,
yes.
ma'am.
Probably if you went to like 125.
So about 405 years.
Yeah, could you zoom out to like 125%? So we can look at them all, sorry. It's a big picture thing. There's a custom zoom down at the bottom, right hand, sorry. And actually 100, that might actually do it. Yeah, I want to see the totals at the bottom, I think. Yeah, fine.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
You have a question when you're ready for.
Okay. I don't know if she's got a question just yet.
Oh,
Okay.
I just wanted to look at how that's gonna affect it, because I think you look at those numbers and then you say, well, wait, we forget that we're adding a new elementary school into this.
Right, and that's no programmatic changes, that's just decreasing the capacity over at Rolling Meadows.
Right,
Now, if we were to
exactly.
do programmatic changes, then that number could possibly.
Yeah, what does that look like?
Again,
What does that look like?
I'm waiting on you guys to tell me what those
So are we thinking
programmatic
about
changes
dual
could be.
language? Are we thinking about maybe another dual language there, or what other?
Another dual language?
I don't know, what
Probably
other- or
not.
Moving dual language from where is it, at Wortham right now?
There's a Spanish immersion
That's what it
at Wortham with
Okay.
about 80 students in it that could move to that.
Maybe-
And then that would decrease the numbers where you don't have
Let
to
those freebies
move the
stay
kids
there.
in the sliver. Sorry, I'm just using
Yeah, no, it's
the
fine.
words that were
That's
used before.
Yeah.
And then you could move them to the new campus,
Right.
which then decreases the capacity at Wortham Oak, where they can move.
What are some other elementary programs that attract people that could help with that? I don't know. I'm asking, brainstorming. What are some other things that might draw?
I can tell you what has worked in Judson.
Yeah.
We've got Fine Arts Academy, we've got the
Okay.
Leadership Academy, we've got STEM, we've got dual language, we've got Spanish immersion. What are some other
Anything on
programs?
history?
Ma'am?
History, American history. Is there any kind of look close up at history? Is there any science, technology?
Well, STEM is usually your science, technology, engineering, and math. Again, we don't have a programmatic history program. We could look into that. I think she had a question first. And then I'll get that. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was just looking at the other slide earlier when it comes to Escondido. And I see that it's gonna be like one of the discussions there. Cause to my understanding, Escondido has like the highest students right now. I just wanna see what like the recommendation, cause as you go through like the years, it increases and it's on 97% for utilization, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, as you can see, it would be over for its capacity. And I did see that he recommend about redrawing something there. I just wanna, know some information or his recommendation about what's the plan for Escondido, right?
The first thing that we could look at is, now, Bob, if you could look at maybe one of your recommendations for decreasing the size for Escondido, but the first thing that we would want to look at is like we talked about. The transfers that are going into Escondido are about 100 and how much? Oh, whoa, really? Between out of district and in district, you said 300.
Oh.
So in terms of capacity, where we're so high, it's because students are transferring in. If we were to cap that transfer and say, hey, you can't go to this campus, but you can go to this one, then we could probably even that out some. But when you have 300 students that are attending a campus that aren't really zoned for that campus, then we have to look at whether or not we can continue to allow that many students.
So with his effort there on the slide with the increasing thing, the transfers are included in there too?
Yes, ma'am.
In the projection?
It's,
They're
well,
still included,
yeah.
the transfers are still
Even though
included.
with, well, it's like your recommendation of redrawing and rerouting, it would still be those numbers then?
Yes.
So it's still gonna reach the capacity or over for like 2 or 3 years, I think?
This is where a transfer situation has to be looked at the rest of the year. It's just a matter of which one do you look at? Do you look at any that are out of district, or are they because of an internal transferring or a program? So there's three issues. It's not just remove them all, it's which one do we want to explore?
And how many out of district, Dr. Goss? Escondido. So 64 out of district. So people coming from out of district into district with a request to go to Escondido, we could call those families and say, we don't want you to leave Judson, but we can no longer house you at Escondido, but we could move you to Converse or to Enar. And you're still welcome in the district, but we're reaching capacity over there.
So the other, because it says 300, it's like 300 for the transfers and it's only 64 for out of district. The other ones are school choice, like they chose Escondido then?
No, they're zoned for the campus. That means they live in that area and they're supposed to go there, the other ones. But there's 300 kids that go to that campus that don't even live in that area. They just chose to go there. And then 60 of them are from out of district. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So in Coronado, the dual language program is there. Last time there was a woman here that said she couldn't, her child wasn't accepted in the dual language program because I guess it was capped because you didn't have enough teachers. That's kind of what the explanation was. But you're suggesting to open up a dual language program at another school? Are you thinking of taking that from Coronado and putting it somewhere else? And how would you have enough teachers then to farm a dual language program at 2 campuses, or just moving all of them over to 1 if you don't have enough to keep the dual language program there? Does that make sense?
You bring
Okay.
up an excellent point. Yes, ma'am, it makes
Okay.
perfect sense. So what she's saying is that if there is a shortage of bilingual teachers, which there is, across the state, would we then open up another dual language program at another campus and then try and staff that with bilingual teachers and then pray that we had enough students that wanted to go into that program? Or would we move the program with the teachers that are currently teaching over to another campus?
Maybe to the new one.
And allow them to instruct those students, and we know that we have enough teachers to meet that capacity because they're already over at the school that they would be coming from. In addition, we're doing all sorts of things now in terms of I'm looking at Nicole now, our human resources department to recruit bilingual teachers, even going down to, what do they call it, Pan Am, or what is it? McAllen? UTRT, there you go. We're going down there to recruit, and we're going all over trying to recruit bilingual teachers.
So if you could get enough teachers, could you not just keep the program where it currently is?
We have enough teachers for where the program is now, and we have other campuses that offer dual language other than Coronado. So they can get into one of those. It's just that right now, it's hard to get enough teachers. It's kind of like special ed. Teachers are in very high demand because there's such a shortage. And we're out there competing against every other district in Texas trying to bring. But we are competitive. And a lot of teachers choose to come and be a part of our program because of our, in terms of our pay. Yes, ma'am.
So it sounds like by looking at the number, looks like looking at the numbers, that Olympia is gonna be pretty at 95% capacity in 5 years, okay? So there's a couple of subdivisions that are not technically Olympia, like Sunrise Canyon, and another subdivision that's close to Pat Booker, that's right behind some of the dental offices on Pat Booker's. Why couldn't we go ahead and send them to Coronado to ease the burden?
So, if we could highlight the areas in which you're talking about, could you come up to the screen and kind of show Bob what the highlight, what the number of students in those areas?
So it's this area right in here. So yeah, just like, cause that's, I think that.
You're just talking about the little
It's
shoehorn.
this whole area right here.
Right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's not many right now, but, you know. And then I know y'all said that they were thinking about opening, there's an apartments that are gonna be
Yes.
opened up right behind the Walmart that could come to us too.
So this is 111.
Okay, yeah, that would help.
So that would be 111 students then that would continue to be zoned. So if we were looking at the amount of students that attend Coronado that are zoned to that campus, if we were to make that move and then move them from Olympia, which is another discussion with the Olympia community, that would be 120 plus the 111. So they currently have 120 students that are zoned for Coronado. They go there.
How many?
120.
Did you say Sunrise Canyon though? Because that's zoned Olympia.
Right.
Yes.
It's not technically, it's not in Olympia.
She's
Oh,
saying,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but it's right there.
but
it's
she's
right
saying if
across
we
town.
rezone them to Coronado, which again would be another conversation for the Olympia community, because they say, I want my student to go to Olympia. We have to deal with that. But again, that's why we're here, to make the hard recommendations to the board, and then the board's gonna have to sit down and say, this is what we're gonna do. But that would still bring them to 200 and, what did I say, 230 something students?
Yes.
That are now zoned for that campus, where their capacity is like 600. So that doesn't really,
Well, you're not counting dual.
well, that's right, I'm
Yeah,
not
talking
counting.
about counting dual too.
Well, I'm talking about the students that live in that area that go to that campus.
Do you have a projection of the students?
Well, we're landlocked, I mean, that's not anything that we can do, that's the way it was
I get
built.
it, I get it. I mean, the demographics and areas change, they move. And we're currently in a situation, I mean, Live Oak is not too far from it. I mean, I grew up in Live Oak. And when I was in there, it was booming, people everywhere. But it's gotten a little older in Live Oak. And now you have maybe kids who moved in with their kids, or even grandkids, that now feed into the campus. So the capacity and the number of students that live in the area are a lot lower than what it used to be. So our job as a district is to look at our current utilization and what's the best way to do that. The most feasible way to do that is we move forward. I'm gonna get her and then I'm gonna come back.
That's fine, you get her, no worries.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question, Dr. Bill. If you, for Coronado, we're low enrollment. I live 3 blocks, my kids went there, I would never change it. But if you have kids in Coronado Village, zoned for Coronado, but you allow them to transfer to Olympia, why do they accept the transfer? I have several kids on my block who go to Olympia. I'm like, because they can. Why do you guys allow that if we're, so low enrollment, but you're allowing transfers out?
The reason why, the question was, if students live in Coronado, but they choose to want to transfer to one of the other campuses, and we're talking about Olympia, is the one that she recommended, or stated. Olympia has that fine arts program, and the reason why we put the fine arts program there, or the leadership program at Friends, is because we truly are trying to attract students from all over the district to come to those campuses to increase their student enrollment. So if they have the capacity to withstand it, then we allow students to go there. But if we ever got to the situation like we are getting close to at Escondido and Copperfield, where we don't have the capacity, and we've done this in the past, then we let people know that, hey, we're capped here at this campus for out of attendance zone students.
How many kids go to Olympia that should go to Coronado? Because Coronado is low enrollment, but y'all are allowing them to go to Olympia.
Well, we allow those students to go anywhere they want in the district because we're a school of choice district. If you see a program that you like and you want to go there and you're willing to take your student there, then we allow you to transfer to that. We don't want anyone to feel like because you live in that area, then now you're not free to go to one of the other campuses if we have the capacity for them to go. Yes, ma'am.
This might be I'm gonna say something controversial, and I'm sorry.
Then don't say it, don't say it.
Oh, no, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say, bring me the microphone, no. So, if I understand this, Coronado has capacity for 550 students, and it only has 120 that are technically going to its zone 2, live in that geographic area right now. The additional comes from the dual language program it has there, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so might it not make sense, and don't come at me with pitchforks, might it not make sense to close Coronado, move the dual language, let the other kids go to Olympia or one of the other low, still low attendance elementary schools? We've got a brand new elementary school that we're trying to put kids at. You've got kids in Coronado that want to go to Olympia. Is there a way to repurpose Coronado to something else? And I know that's an unpopular thing, but you can't justify 120 kids in a whole elementary school that could be 550 kids, in my crazy mind. I think maybe is that an option?
I appreciate your candidness.
It's just, when you
Yes,
look at the
ma'am.
map, that's.
Logistics of it, other people live there.
All right, but 120, wouldn't they maybe be happy going to Olympia? No. Really? Okay. Fair, I mean, that's fair, I don't know.
I would say this,
Area and it's no offense to Olympia, they've been fantastic in this transfer, the staff has been great, but we weren't given that choice. We weren't given the choice when my son started pre-K of staying in Coronado. We live in Coronado, the logistics for my family, it works better, arranging that and being in that area. We like the neighborhood. I don't mind Olympia, but the logistics of having to navigate that and mitigate that, I would prefer Coronado to stay on.
Okay, that's
So-
fair.
They do have a great staff, and they do have great teachers.
Right.
I need us to do something though, real quick.
Yeah.
I need us to helicopter up. The reason why we're in this meeting is because we're not looking at individual situations. We're looking at the utilization and capacity for Judson ISD in this transition period. And I understand that people may have preferences as we move forward. But what we're looking for this group to give us is recommendations that we can take to the board that show the best utilization of facilities within Judson ISD. And I appreciate the way that you reworded what you were talking about. She originally said close. We're not looking to close anything, but the word repurpose, we have to think about as we move forward because we have other needs across the district as well. And that's what I've asked this entire committee to look at, is how we can look at the best utilization. And you have the forecasted numbers for 10 years out. So how can we make decisions today that will put Judson ISD in the best possible position for allowing their students to come in 10 years from now? And that can't be based on what our current preferences are. It has to be based on our knowledge and what we can do programmatic-wise as we move forward. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
That all makes sense, and yet you still have high enrollment in Copperfield, and she was talking about those areas in Sunrise Canyon, and you got a pretty high enrollment in Olympia. So if you pulled those kids from the Copperfield school, and you pulled those kids in that, the 100 and whatever kids that you said were in that area, and you brought them over to Coronado, that would bring that enrollment up significantly.
To 230.
Well, and but that, you're not counting the Copperfield people too.
If we were to
So
bring
you were able to
Copperfield
do
down.
that. Right, you were able to do that because that's at a highly utilized school. So you could essentially redistribute that population there, and then you could keep the dual language program, which would put the enrollment at a higher capacity, which would make it a functional school.
Yes,
And then you protect the people that live in that neighborhood from it becoming something potentially, I know you're not gonna let it be a vacant building, but something that could be detrimental to some that are living within that area. My parents live across the street from Coronado. And so for it to become something that is questionable, that has been mentioned in the past, which I know has not been decided, is not affecting the people that don't live there. So it's easy for somebody to say that doesn't live next to that school, let's do this with it. But when you're living there, you're affecting not only, that immediate community, but eventually in the long run, your tax base is gonna eventually be affected by what happened at that school, if that makes sense, in the long run. And you don't want that tax base. I know the taxes there are not as high as they are possibly over in Olympia. However, that's still significantly higher than what it could be in the future if that was to become something that was undesirable to the community.
Again, I heard several statements, and the statement was, we don't want to do something at one of the campuses that we moved to repurpose that could be detrimental. We don't feel like we have a detrimental situation in Judson. So I understand what you're saying, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But regardless of what the repurposing was, we don't feel like it would be detrimental to any of the facilities that we have available. And then the other recommendation was, maybe we could take students that are at Copperfield or that feed into the Copperfield area and then bring them back up 1604, passing Salinas into Coronado. And then we're going to have to talk to that group of parents and students and try and explain that capacity moving as well. I would ask us to look at all of it. If we think that bringing the students back from Copperfield is the best way to get this done, then as a committee, then that's what we should be recommending to the board. If we think that repurposing one of our campuses and utilizing it for something else, then that's the recommendation we should be making to the board.
When you mean repurpose, Dr. Phil, if you have to repurpose Coronado, what would you repurpose it to?
I hate being cornered into a situation where I'm saying this is what we would repurpose it for, because that's what this committee is supposed to be recommending to us, what types of programs that are out there that need more space. I would tell you our special ed program needs more space. They're over here in the ERC, and they could really use another facility that they could move into. And then we have a adult years program that we put into Judson High School that is, in Judson needs the capacity. We could move that in. I'm not gonna play games. We have a situation with the alternative school, where they're in an office building. We could repurpose that. We have a bunch of people in the ERC. Maybe we could repurpose it to an office building that's over there in Coronado. But that's for us to look at to determine what would be the best recommendation. That's just Dr. Fields throwing some stuff out. Please don't leave the meeting saying, Dr. Fields said we're gonna turn it into, that's not what I'm saying. You ask me a question, I wanna be upfront.
Looks like
So
it's
those-
there, and I'm just wondering, because
Yes.
there's
So
so much
those are some of the
clients,
things.
so that's why I'm like, what would it be to?
Yes.
I've driven by the alternative schools, and some of those kids, it's rough.
And I can tell you that there are certain things that could be done, like buses. No more driving to school or walking to school, you get bused. Yes. And you get bused out. Any more questions?
Hi, Dr. Gilson.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I know two meetings ago with a discussion as far as programs, and that's gonna probably help drive the discussion as far as Coronado. I know it was discussed that some of the discussion that had transpired with Salma was probably making that a dual language. That was some of the wants and interest. So then has that been decided on? Because I know that.
Not at all. That is a recommendation that would come from this committee. And even if we were to take the entire campus and move it into the Selma school.
So that'd be another recommendation.
And that could be a recommendation that we make where all of Coronado.
You already
goes
have
to
your
the-
two-way
right.
dual language and moved over to Salma.
Teachers, everything. Yeah.
Might attract some of the sliver, you never know.
Might attract some of the sliver.
Well, and the Spanish emergency, you
That's
could
what I
move
mean.
that in
Put
there
that
as
all
well.
together,
So
you've got
now we're
Spanish
cooking with,
magnet.
there's a larger number of students at the new opening elementary, so.
That's a two-word hard lane.
Yes. Well, hey, you guys, I'm Bob, thanks, man. This is a lot of work. We appreciate you coming down and giving this to us. As we move forward, and Mr. Brooks has another meeting scheduled for November 6th. So now I'd ask you to pull this video up, watch it again, and be prepared as we come back in November 6th. And what we really want to do is get to where we're actually drawing some of these lines. Even if we just do the elementary and the middle school, and then we can make that proposal to the board, they can make a decision, and then now we can start marketing that to the community so everyone knows where they're going to be in fall of 2025. In addition, we can have our principal for the new middle school, Mr. Broward. And our principal for the new elementary school, which I know that Dr. Taganow is working on now. Then start meeting with those students because we've already identified the attendance zones as we get ready to move forward, and they can start having meetings throughout the beginning of next year. Make sense? Did I leave anything out? Yes, ma'am.
Just give us about 24 hours to post the video because this is recorded and not live, so it won't be out immediately. So don't go home tonight looking for the video. You'll wait till
Thank you so much. So it won't be up for 24 hours. November 6th.
Next Wednesday? No, next Wednesday.
No.
Yeah, that's
That's what I said, November 6th.
November's next week.
Is that what it is? Okay.
You want to change it?
November 6th. That's it. Gotcha. But what we want to do is, all we're trying to do is create opportunities for you guys to come back and say, hey, we can, collectively, we feel like this now for the new middle school. Those lines kind of draw themselves, you guys, the middle school line. And the elementary lines kind of draw themselves as well. We just maybe could move some programs over there as well. But if we can get that to the board and they can make a decision, then we can start making some advances in terms of meeting with kids and saying, hey, you're going to be going to the new school. You know, this is going to be the mascot. Maybe get some T-shirts so they can know what they're going to be next year. Right? Hey, you guys, thank you one more time for coming. Thank you, guys.